few days ago, Dean Godson telephoned me and informed me, deanishly, a new word for your lexicon, that the thing I would want to do most at around 1 o'clock next Monday was give a vote of thanks to Mak Chishty. And of course he was right, and I do it with great pleasure, and I think this has been a valuable and interesting morning. My very distinguished lawyer wife tells me that most important messages are delivered with charm, humility, and eloquence. She also tells me that I occasionally manage the first and the third, but never the second. You have done this with charm, humility, and eloquence and sent us a very strong message. You said that you were groggy when you arrived here this morning. That was cured instantly by a bit of Deanish vocabulary when he referred to himself and Lenin as it were, sitting on the same sofa, an image that will travel the world with me in the next few days. Mr. Chishty, you've brought into this important policy think tank your experience both in the public sector and as an observer in society. You've had a very distinguished career as a police officer, but you're now moving quickly into new pastures. And it is my view that you should sustain the mission of trying to be a leader of the moral compass and ethical values of British Islam and the way in which we all work together to counter extremism. You used the metaphor of sailing upstream. We certainly do have to sail upstream, often against a strong wind. I usually use a similar metaphor, as it were, which is digging deep. We need to dig deep into Muslim thought in the United Kingdom, and particularly into Muslim communities. And you have given us that message. You've given us a message that we must dissociate from the misleading and disingenuous, however attractively it may be presented, and whoever supports it. Because people who support what and I think you, sir, would regard as misleading and disingenuous are often strong voices with access to the public media. I agree with you absolutely. It's very important that we should say prevent should not be a hot political potato. We now have the Investigatory Powers Act, but it was enacted upstream against a very strong wind with a very clever brand called the Snooper's Charter, which was meaningless, by the way, as a phrase, deployed against us. The use of the term toxic against prevent is rather like the term Snooper's Charter, but fortunately not as powerful. We have to disabuse people of the idea that prevent, which of course can be improved in exactly the ways you say, from being regarded as toxic. In doing so, I would say, and I think you agree with this, that we should challenge the official Muslim bodies to be more creative and more open. I appeared in an interview with that great information organ, Radio Wales, the other day, on which, as a former Welsh MP, I have appeared often, so I know how they operate. And they put up in the 1+2 one of the Welsh Muslim leaders who was criticising prevent. And I said to him, name me a single Welsh prevent activity which you can say is toxic on an evidence base. And it was one of those instances where I repeated the question because answer there was none. And I think we have to ensure that the Muslim bodies in this country, and I don't apologize for using this word, modernize themselves, make themselves more contemporary, and give new opportunities for leadership to the many brilliant young British Muslims, women as well as men, very importantly, women as well as men. We heard from a gentleman who wishes to establish an organization in the third sector. I think that is a very important area for work in this area. The third sector can sometimes say things that it would be impossible for public bodies to say, and they should. Blue sky thinking is always welcome. You've told us, Mak, that we should be mapping extremism. I agree. I think it's necessary. We need to be brave and robust in doing so. Being balanced and objective can include disruption. It's perfectly respectable to disrupt extremism as part of a balanced and objective approach. And we should not appease, because appeasement always goes wrong. In my view, and you've illustrated this, modern Islam in the United Kingdom is clever, young, British, our partners, definitely not our foes. And it brings me back to something that certainly influenced me greatly in the 1980s, which is the view of the political philosopher David Selborne, which he described as the principle of duty, in which, in simple terms, we have a lot of rights, but we owe something to society in return for those rights. As it were, every right involves a duty. 99.9% recurring of the Muslim community in the United Kingdom believe that. And we need to re-express that belief as a single society. We were left by you, Mak, if I may say so, I can't resist this, with one further thought which I shall savour as I fall asleep at night. And that is the concept of our mothers-in-law as special constables. There is a distinguished retired circuit judge here, Judge Friedman. My mother-in-law is a distinguished retired circuit judge and a very delightful person. I suspect that if she were wearing the body-worn video that constables and special constables wear in London now, you would see counter-extremism deployed with the most gorgeous felicity and charm. So go out and encourage your mothers-in-law to become special constables. It also keeps them away some of the time. So thank you, Mak, very much for an excellent address today. You've given us a great deal of food for thought. And thank you, Dean and Policy Exchange, for once again offering us something right at the forefront of contemporary thinking and contemporary issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.